Start with your feet. On a generation ship, they need somewhere believable to land, not just a metal panel beneath them, but a floor that pulls back. A floor your bones, muscles, blood, and inner ears can trust for decades. Then your children must trust it, and their children after them. We often imagine a generation ship as a sealed little world crossing the dark between stars. Give it air, water, food, and enough room, and the word world seems complete. But a world also has gravity. Earth supplies that without machinery, fuel, or maintenance crews. A ship has to make it. That is non-negotiable, because the passengers aren't taking a short trip. They may live entire lives aboard. Babies born there may grow old without ever standing on a planet. If the ship can't provide a steady pull, weightlessness stops being a curious travel condition. It becomes the environment shaping every human body on board. The usual answer is to spin the ship. Stand inside a turning cylinder and the floor presses against your feet. It can feel something like gravity, though the motion brings problems of its own. Make the circle too small, and your head and feet move at noticeably different speeds. Turn your head, reach upward, or walk across the curve, and your inner ear may object. The floor exists, but your body may keep noticing the trick. So the first challenge isn't merely building a ship that survives for centuries. It's building a place where human bodies can stand, grow, sleep, and age without the ground quietly betraying them. Before we settle in, if you enjoy exploring questions like this with me, subscribing helps others find their way here too, and I would genuinely like to hear your thoughts below. I read every single comment. Now, let's begin. When most of us imagine weightlessness, we imagine the easy part. A person lets go of a pencil, and the pencil stays beside them. A drink becomes a floating sphere. Sleeping no longer requires a mattress. It looks less like danger and more like the floor has kindly stopped interrupting. Your body reads the situation differently. Here on Earth, gravity gives every part of you a steady assignment. Your legs carry weight, your spine supports your body, blood settles below your heart. Tiny organs in your inner ear tell your brain which way is down. Even while you sleep, that pull remains in the background. Remove it, and all those signals change together. Start with your muscles and bones. They're built more like a house than a loose collection of parts. Beams stay strong because they carry loads. Muscles keep their strength because they work against resistance. In microgravity, the muscles of the legs and back have much less to do. Bones in weight-bearing areas receive fewer of the stresses that normally tell them to keep rebuilding. At the same time, the body's fluids shift. On Earth, your heart spends every day lifting blood from your legs toward your head. In orbit, that uphill climb disappears. Blood moves toward the chest and face. Astronauts can look puffy around the eyes while their legs become thinner. The body senses this distribution and begins adjusting its fluid volume, as though it has been carrying too much. Then there's balance. Inside each inner ear are fluid-filled structures that respond when your head turns or accelerates. On Earth, the brain combines those signals with vision, touch, and gravity's downward pull. In orbit, the downward clue vanishes. Your eyes may say a wall is upright, while your inner ear has no opinion on the matter. For a while, nausea and disorientation are common. And orientation becomes oddly negotiable. If there's no down, then the surface beneath your feet is only a floor because everyone agrees to use it that way. Turn your body 90 degrees, and the room may seem to turn with you. That sounds playful until you're trying to move, find equipment, or wake and work out where your arms have drifted. None of these changes waits politely for another to finish. The heart adjusts while muscles weaken. Fluid shifts while the balance system relearns its job. Bones respond to lighter loads while the brain builds a new map of the room. The missing floor isn't one missing sensation. It's a missing reference used by much of the body. The body doesn't get an interval in which to solve one change before the next begins. It has to revise strength, circulation, balance, and its sense of place while the person still eats, sleeps, works, and reaches for a handhold in the dark. That counts because a ship meant to become a world can't treat weightlessness as harmless empty space between useful moments. Exercise can challenge muscles and bones, but it doesn't fully restore the old movement of blood or give the inner ear a permanent down. Medication may ease nausea, but it can't load a hip. Straps can hold a sleeper in place, but the body still knows that nothing beneath it is carrying weight. So the problem is unusually tangled. Many systems are changing for the same basic reason, yet each responds in its own way. A lasting home in space needs more than a collection of separate repairs. It needs a countermeasure broad enough to give bones, muscles, blood, balance, and orientation something familiar at the same time. Give a bone less work, and the body starts treating some of it as spare material. That sounds almost sensible. Bones are expensive living tissue. They're always being taken apart and rebuilt a little at a time. On Earth, each step tells that rebuilding system where strength is still needed, remove the steady load, and the balance begins to shift. NASA has measured the result in astronauts. In weight-bearing bones, including the hips and legs, mineral density can fall by about 1 to 1.5% for every month spent in microgravity. 1 month. Not a lifetime, and not even a long mission. The change becomes measurable while an astronaut is still settling into life aboard. That monthly figure needs some care. It doesn't mean every astronaut loses exactly the same amount. Different bones change at different rates, and exercise can reduce the loss. A scan also can't tell you exactly when a particular bone will break. Bone strength depends on shape and inner structure, not only how much mineral is packed inside. Still, 1 to 1.5% a month isn't background noise. On Earth, we usually discuss bone loss across years. In orbit, bones built to hold you upright can begin paying the bill within weeks. The body isn't waiting patiently for gravity to return. It's remodeling itself for the place where it now lives. Astronauts fight that change with serious equipment. They strap themselves to treadmills so each stride pushes against a harness. They use resistance machines designed to imitate heavy lifting without a stack of weights. A loose dumbbell is rather pointless when the dumbbell, your arm, and the rest of you all want to drift together. The machine has to create resistance another way. That work helps, but it doesn't make the missing floor irrelevant. Exercise takes time, machinery, maintenance, power, and steady effort. The crew must keep choosing the substitute because the ship supplies no load on its own. Miss the routine through illness, injury, equipment failure, or exhaustion, and the body still receives the quieter message: this strength isn't required here. For a mission lasting months, that's a medical problem with a demanding countermeasure. For people meant to live their whole lives between worlds, it becomes something larger. Children would be building bone in an environment that never asks their skeletons to carry ordinary weight. Adults would age there. That ordinary background load is why gravity keeps returning to serious spacecraft research. It isn't merely another machine beside the treadmill or the resistance equipment. It may be one of the few countermeasures broad enough to reach several body systems at once. Think of the usual approach as maintaining a house with separate appointments. One person checks the plumbing, another handles the wiring, someone else repairs the foundation. Each visit may help, but the house spends most of the day waiting for the next repair. Exercise in space works a little like that. It gives muscles and bones a valuable period of loading. Then the crew member floats away and the missing signal returns. Artificial gravity would change the room instead of scheduling another appointment. Spin a spacecraft or part of one, and the crew feels an outward push against the floor. In the rotating frame, that push can imitate some of the steady loading that gravity provides on Earth. Your legs carry weight. Your heart must move blood through a body with a meaningful up and down. Your balance organs receive a directional cue again. That combination is the attraction. NASA still treats artificial gravity as one of the few families of countermeasures that might address several major problems together: weakening bone, shrinking muscle, cardiovascular changes, and disturbances in balance and movement. A drug aimed at bone may help bone. A workout aimed at muscle may help muscle. Neither necessarily tells the inner ear which way is down, or asks the circulation to behave as it does while you're standing. The word might counts. Artificial gravity hasn't yet been proved as a complete answer for long human voyages. Researchers still have to work out how strong it should be, how long people need it, and whether short daily sessions can match continuous exposure. Rotation also brings its own awkwardness. Move your head inside a small spinning room, and the motion can feel strange or nauseating because your balance system is receiving signals it didn't evolve to sort out. A larger rotating habitat could make those effects gentler, but larger structures cost mass, money, and engineering effort. A small centrifuge is easier to fit into a vehicle, though it produces a bigger difference between the pull at your head and the pull at your feet. You could be lying down, pedaling, or exercising while spinning, rather than strolling around a circular town like someone in an old space illustration. So the near-term version may be less glamorous. A crew member strapped into a compact centrifuge for a prescribed part of the day. Even that could offer something unusually useful. Instead of chasing 4 separate consequences after they appear, it would restore part of the environmental signal those systems share. That doesn't make gravity a cure-all. Radiation remains radiation. Isolation remains isolation. A spinning room won't solve every danger between Earth and Mars. But when one missing condition touches your skeleton, muscles, circulation, balance, and movement at the same time, restoring some of that condition isn't just another gadget. Gravity remains central because the body never treated it as a single-purpose feature. That priority sounds clear until someone asks a very practical question. How much gravity should the ship provide? The plain answer is that researchers don't yet know. We know that spending a long time with almost no gravity can harm the body. We also know that full Earth gravity is a condition the human body handles well. Somewhere between those two ends may be a useful dose. But knowing that a useful range probably exists isn't the same as having a prescription. A doctor wouldn't simply write some medicine on a bottle. The amount counts. So does the timing. A small dose taken often may behave differently from a larger dose taken occasionally. Artificial gravity brings the same awkward problem, except the treatment is also the room you live in. First, there's the gravity level itself. Does the body need something close to Earth gravity, or would a smaller pull do enough? Different parts of the body may not share one neat threshold. A level that helps one response may be too weak for another. That leaves designers without a single number they can place at the top of the page and treat as settled. Then there's the gradient. On a rotating ship, the pull can be stronger at your feet than at your head. How large can that difference become before it causes trouble? Researchers can describe the physical effect. They cannot yet point to one proven gradient that will suit everyone during years of ordinary living. Rotation rate counts too. Spin too slowly, and the structure generally has to reach farther outward to create the desired pull. Spin faster, and the ship can be smaller, but motion inside it may feel less natural. Turn your head, stand up, or walk across the floor, and your balance system has to make sense of movements it never met on Earth. People can adapt to some unusual motion, but the comfortable long-term limit is still not a finished rule. Exposure adds another gap. Perhaps people need artificial gravity all day. Perhaps several hours would be enough. Perhaps shorter sessions, repeated regularly, could provide much of the benefit. We don't yet have the long-duration human evidence needed to choose confidently among those schedules. And frequency is part of that same missing prescription. Would a daily period work differently from longer sessions separated by more time? If someone misses a session, does the effect fade quickly or slowly? Those questions sound almost administrative until you remember that each answer can change the ship. A system used continuously becomes a habitat. A system used briefly might be a smaller rotating compartment. The medical schedule reaches straight into the floor plan. This is why artificial gravity can be both sensible and unsettled. The basic logic may be strong, while the exact treatment remains unknown. Engineers are being asked to design a machine around a dose that medicine hasn't fully defined. That doesn't make the idea useless. It means careful designs need margins, monitoring, and room to adjust, rather than pretending one elegant calculation has solved the human problem. So the next step isn't to declare a perfect amount of gravity. It's to look at what hardware can create a useful pull at all. A whole ship can rotate. 2 sections can swing around a shared center. A smaller chamber can spin inside a vessel that otherwise stays still. The missing prescription doesn't disappear when metal enters the design. It becomes the constraint shaping every form the ship can actually build. For the people aboard, those choices would all answer the same bodily need in different ways. One design would make the steady pull part of every room and every hour. Another would ask people to visit it on a schedule. The body would still be asking for load, direction, and circulation cues. Only the place and timing would change. That is why the medical question cannot be separated from the shape of the ship. The floor plan becomes part of the treatment, and the treatment becomes part of ordinary life. When people hear artificial gravity, they often imagine a machine humming beneath the floor, somehow pulling everyone downward. Science fiction has trained us well. Somewhere behind a sealed panel, gravity is simply switched on. We don't know how to build that machine. But we do know how to make a floor keep pressing against your feet. You rotate the place where you live. You felt the basic effect in a turning car. Your body wants to keep moving along its old path, while the car bends beneath you. The door or the seat has to push you inward, forcing your path to curve. From inside the car, it feels as though something is pulling you outward. A rotating habitat uses the same physics continuously. Its outer wall becomes the floor. As the habitat turns, that floor keeps pushing you toward the center, bending your motion into a circle. Your body presses back against it. To someone living inside, that steady contact can feel like weight. Physicists call it apparent gravity because no new gravitational pull has appeared. The habitat is accelerating you inward. Still, the pressure beneath your feet is real. A scale would register it. Loose objects would settle toward the outer wall. You could stand, walk, sleep, and pour a drink, although the drink might remind you that you're living inside a turning machine. This isn't a speculative force or a clever loophole waiting for unknown physics. Rotation has been understood for centuries. Engineers use the same principle in centrifuges, where spinning separates materials by forcing them to follow curved paths. Astronauts and pilots train in rotating machines that produce sustained acceleration. The machinery may be difficult, but the effect itself isn't in doubt. That changes the nature of the problem. The question is no longer whether a spacecraft can produce something that feels like weight. It can. The plain questions are what must rotate, how large it must be, and how quickly it must turn. Those choices are tied together. A small habitat has to spin faster to produce the same apparent weight as a larger one. Faster rotation can make ordinary movement feel odd, because different parts of your body are traveling through slightly different circles. Turn your head, reach upward, or walk across the floor, and the forces can shift in ways no room on Earth prepares you for. A larger rotating structure can turn more slowly and make those effects gentler. But larger means more material, more mass, more joints, more shielding, and more machinery that must keep working far from home. The structure also has to survive the constant strain of holding itself together while it spins. Then there is the rest of the ship. Antennas may need to point steadily. Solar arrays may prefer a different orientation. Engines, docking ports, fuel lines, cables, and passageways all have to coexist with a living area that refuses to sit still. Even stopping the rotation for repairs becomes an operation rather than a pause. So the mature route to artificial gravity isn't magic hidden beneath the deck. It is a room, a ring, or a ship in deliberate motion. The physics is available. It will press a floor against your feet for as long as the system keeps turning. And that is precisely why the idea deserves to be taken seriously. Rotation gives us a real tool. It also sends the bill in mass, size, motion, and mechanical complexity. Once a ship spins, apparent weight becomes a geometry problem. You can't choose the size of the living ring and its rotation rate independently. Change one, and the other has to answer. Imagine a child riding a playground carousel. Near the center, the ride feels fairly tame. Move toward the outer rail, and you feel a stronger pull against your hands. The carousel hasn't sped up. You've simply moved farther from its axis, so your body has to travel around a larger circle in the same amount of time. A rotating habitat works the same way. The floor curves around the axis, and your body keeps trying to move in a straight line. The floor continually turns you away from that straight path. You feel the floor pressing into your feet, and that pressure is what a scale would read as your apparent weight. How much pressure you get depends on two things: how far the floor is from the axis, and how quickly the habitat turns. Engineers call that distance the radius. The turning rate is usually given in revolutions per minute, or RPM. The awkward part is that spin rate has an unusually strong effect. Double the radius while keeping the same RPM, and the apparent gravity doubles. Double the RPM while keeping the same radius, and it becomes 4 times as strong. That gives designers two ways to make an Earth-like floor: build a large ring that turns slowly, or build a smaller ring that turns quickly. At 1 revolution per minute, a habitat needs a radius of about 895 meters, or roughly 2,940 feet, to produce something close to Earth gravity at the rim. That means a diameter of nearly 1.8 kilometers, or about 1.1 miles. It would turn with the calm pace of a clock's second hand, but it would be an enormous object to build in space. Raise the rate to 2 revolutions per minute, and the required radius falls to about 224 meters, or 735 feet. The ring is now much smaller because doubling the spin gives 4 times the effect. At 4 revolutions per minute, the radius drops again to about 56 meters, or 184 feet. That fits into a far more compact design. At 6 revolutions per minute, only about 25 meters, or 82 feet, can produce roughly the same apparent gravity at the outer floor. On paper, faster rotation looks like a wonderful bargain. Less radius means shorter structural beams, a smaller pressure vessel, and less material spanning the distance from the hub. But your inner ear also notices rotation. Turn your head, climb a ladder toward the axis, or reach down to pick something up, and the motion can feel wrong in ways that a stationary room never does. There's another bit of awkwardness. In a small ring, your feet are farther from the axis than your head. They may therefore feel noticeably heavier. A tossed object can curve away from where you expect it to land. Even walking with or against the spin slightly changes what your body feels. A larger habitat softens these effects because the difference between head level and floor level becomes a small fraction of the whole radius. Slow rotation is usually gentler on people, but gentleness takes space. Compactness saves structure, but it asks the crew to tolerate more spin. So every rotating habitat inherits the same bargain. Radius can buy a slower, calmer ride, while RPM can buy a smaller ship. 2 revolutions per minute sounds almost lazy. Imagine a hand on a clock face, except it completes a full circle every 30 seconds. You could stand nearby and count the turns without losing track. 1, then another. It hardly sounds like the machinery of artificial gravity. But if you want the floor to press on your feet with about the same strength as Earth's gravity, that gentle rate demands a radius of roughly 224 meters, or 735 feet. That's the distance from the center of rotation to the floor. The full habitat would stretch about 448 meters across, or 1,470 feet, before you added anything outside the living ring. That's where the mental imagine changes. Many of us hear rotating spacecraft and imagine a roomy ship with a circular corridor tucked somewhere inside it. Perhaps the ring looks large enough for a few cabins, a medical bay, and a place to exercise. At 2 revolutions per minute, though, an Earth-like floor can't hide inside anything that compact. The geometry has pushed it outward until the circle is closer to a piece of major infrastructure than a room aboard a ship. You can feel why with something ordinary. Swing a key on a long cord, slowly. If the cord is short, the key doesn't pull outward very strongly unless you whip it around. Give the key a much longer cord, and the same unhurried turning can produce a stronger pull. A rotating habitat works by the same relationship. At a low spin rate, the floor needs a long path around the axis to provide the acceleration your body reads as weight. That 224-meter radius, or 735-foot radius, isn't empty space in the usual design sense. It affects almost everything. The floor curves around a circle whose center lies hundreds of feet away. Opposite neighborhoods would face one another across the axis. Looking up might mean looking toward the hub, not toward a ceiling just above your head. Elevators or spokes would run inward toward a place where apparent weight gradually fades. Even a simple maintenance trip becomes slightly odd. Walk from the rim toward the center, and you become lighter as you go. Loose objects still follow ordinary motion, but the turning frame makes their paths look bent to anyone inside. None of that requires exotic physics. It's what familiar motion looks like when your home is the thing rotating. The size also changes what engineers mean by a ship. A small spacecraft can be built, launched, checked, and repaired as one object. A circle hundreds of meters in radius begins to sound more like something assembled in orbit from many pieces. Its bearings, spokes, living areas, power lines, and air seals all have to tolerate continuous rotation. The slow turn may be comfortable for the crew, but the structure paying for that comfort is enormous. And that's the useful surprise hidden inside 2 RPM. The number sounds modest because RPM describes time, not size. 2 turns each minute tells you how calmly the habitat rotates. It says nothing about how far the floor must sit from the center to make that calm rotation feel like Earth. So let the familiar little wheel disappear. At 2 RPM and about 1 G, you aren't picturing a spinning room anymore. You're picturing a 224-meter or 735-foot reach from the hub to the ground beneath your shoes. A home whose gentle motion only works because the home itself has become immense. If you want the ship to shrink, you have to turn the dial the other way. Spin the habitat faster, and the floor no longer needs to sit hundreds of meters from the center. The same apparent weight can be produced across a much smaller circle. At 4 revolutions per minute, 1 Gi needs a radius of about 56 meters or 184 feet. That's still a large machine, but it's no longer an immense wheel stretching 224 meters from its hub. The radius has been cut to 1/4 of that earlier size simply by doubling the rotation rate. The reason is easier to feel with something ordinary. Swing a bucket of water slowly, and you need a broad, patient arc to keep the water pressed into the bottom. Swing it faster, and the pull against the bucket grows quickly. A rotating habitat works by the same relationship. More speed produces more apparent weight at the same radius. Or, if you only need 1 G, more speed lets you bring the floor inward. Turn the habitat up to 6 revolutions per minute, and the required radius falls again. Now 1 G takes about 25 meters, or 82 feet. From the center to the floor, that's roughly the length of a swimming pool. A ship built around that scale is far easier to imagine launching, assembling, and pushing through space than a structure hundreds of meters wide. But the steel you save doesn't make the problem vanish. It moves the problem into the people. At 6 RPM, the room completes a turn every 10 seconds. You may not notice that by watching the floor, because the floor comes with you. Your balance system does notice. The fluid inside your inner ears responds whenever you turn your head, bend down, or stand up. In a rotating room, those small movements are being added to a larger motion that never stops. Try to imagine getting out of bed there. You sit up, look toward the door, then glance down for a sock that has escaped overnight. On Earth, these are forgettable movements. Inside a compact spinning ship, each one can change the forces acting across your head. Your eyes report a steady room. Your inner ears may report something less cooperative. The result can be dizziness, nausea, or a strong sense that your body and the room have quietly disagreed about which way is level. There's another awkward detail. In a small habitat, your feet are farther from the axis than your head. Since apparent gravity grows with distance from the center, the floor can feel Earth-like, while the pull across your body is less even. The smaller the radius, the more noticeable that difference becomes. Moving inward or outward also changes your sideways motion. so walking across the room can produce forces you never asked for. Even reaching upward can feel slightly wrong. None of this proves that 6 RPM is unusable. People can adapt to rotation, and tolerance varies. Training, layout, movement habits, and time all matter. But a compact design asks more from the crew, especially during the period when their brains are still learning what the ship considers normal. So the engineering bargain is clean, even if the human experience isn't. 4 RPM buys a radius of about 56 meters, or 184 feet. 6 RPM buys about 25 meters, or 82 feet. Faster spin saves structure, mass, and space. Then the crew has to pay the remaining cost with their own senses. You might expect your inner ear to agree with your eyes about something as basic as which way you're moving. Most of the time it does. Turn your head, and the room shifts across your vision, while tiny organs inside your skull register the same turn. Your brain compares both reports and quietly builds one answer. On a rotating floor, that arrangement can come apart. Your eyes may see an ordinary room, your feet may feel a steady floor. Then you move your head, and the machinery in your inner ear gives you a second answer. The inner ear has 2 main ways of sensing motion. 3 fluid-filled loops detect rotation. Small chambers beside them detect straight-line acceleration and the pull we call gravity. Together, they help your brain work out whether you're turning, tilting, speeding up, or simply standing still. You never feel the calculation happening. You just know which way is down, usually. Now imagine carrying a bowl of soup across a slowly turning restaurant. If you walk straight from your table, the bowl seems to drift sideways because the floor keeps rotating beneath you. That sideways-looking motion is called the Coriolis effect. It isn't a mysterious new force reaching into the bowl. It appears because you're watching motion from inside a rotating system. Your body has the same problem, except some of the moving fluid is inside your head. When you nod, look over your shoulder, or bend to pick something up, your inner ear canals change orientation while the station is already carrying you around its axis. The fluid responds to both motions together. Your brain expects the familiar signal produced by one head movement on Earth. Instead, it receives a combined signal that can suggest a tilt or turn you didn't make. This is why rotation studies don't treat motion illusions as a decorative inconvenience, somewhere below the serious engineering. They appear again and again in the classical work on rotating stations, alongside structure, air, radiation, and power. Coriolis effects and the body's response to them help set practical limits on how quickly a habitat should spin. A station can satisfy the equation for artificial gravity and still be a miserable place to stand up, turn around, and find your shoes. The awkward part is that remaining perfectly still may feel fine. Sit facing one direction, and your eyes, muscles, and inner ear can settle into a truce. Then someone calls your name. You turn toward them, and the disagreement arrives. The room may seem to pitch, roll, or swing briefly, even though every wall remains exactly where the builders put it. The station hasn't wobbled. Your sense of orientation has. Engineers and physiologists often describe this as cross-coupled rotation. The phrase sounds tidy. The sensation may not be. One rotation comes from the habitat carrying your whole body around. Another comes from moving your head about a different axis. The inner ear canals combine them, and the resulting signal doesn't match the calm visual scene in front of you. That conflict is closely tied to disorientation and motion sickness. People can adapt to some rotating environments. Training, gradual exposure, and slower head movements may help. But adaptation isn't a magic eraser, and people don't all respond alike. Spin rate, activity, posture, and individual sensitivity still matter. Before we decide that a compact rotating home is comfortable, then, we have to leave the clean drawing and place a moving human inside it. The first problem is already waiting in the fluid behind their ears. You might imagine the discomfort as a brief price of arrival. Step inside, feel unsteady for a while, then wait for your body to settle. But people in a rotating home wouldn't simply arrive and stand still. They would walk, turn, bend, look over a shoulder, climb out of bed, and pick things up from the floor. Ordinary life keeps asking the balance system to work. that made motion sickness more than a medical footnote in early station studies. It became a design limit. A station could produce useful artificial gravity and still be a miserable place to live if routine movements repeatedly brought on nausea, dizziness, or confusion. The floor might hold your feet down perfectly well, while your body kept insisting that something about the room was wrong. Imagine getting dressed after waking. You sit up, lean forward, turn toward a drawer, then stand. None of those movements is dramatic. On Earth, you barely notice them. In a rotating room, each one can change the strange motion cues your body receives. A quick glance toward a sound may feel worse than facing forward. Reaching beneath a table may be harder than walking across the room. Even rolling over in bed could become an event you learn to do carefully. That awkwardness spreads into work. A crew member repairing equipment can't always keep their head still and upright. They may need to crouch, twist, look above them, then check a display at their side. A scientist handling a delicate sample needs steady hands and clear attention. If part of that attention is being spent suppressing nausea, performance can suffer before anyone is visibly ill. There's also disorientation, which can be quieter and more dangerous. You may know which surface is the floor, yet briefly misjudge how your body is moving. That counts around ladders, tools, hot equipment, and narrow passages. A person doesn't need to collapse for the environment to become unsafe. One poorly timed step or badly aimed reach can be enough. Classical design guidance, therefore, tended to favor slower rotation. Lower spin rates usually meant larger structures if engineers wanted the same apparent weight at the floor. And larger structures meant more material, more difficult construction, and more cost. Human comfort was tied directly to the size of the machine. The exact acceptable rate was never one clean number for everyone. Some people became uncomfortable at rates others tolerated. The task mattered too. Sitting quietly was not the same as walking around, and walking was not the same as repeatedly turning the head while working. Short tests could reveal immediate sickness, but they couldn't always show how a crew would function through days of meals, maintenance, exercise, and sleep. So engineers had good reason to be cautious. If a compact station spun quickly, its smaller size might look elegant on paper, but the crew could pay for that elegance every time they moved naturally. That was the old practical boundary. Build large enough to rotate gently, or accept that the inhabitants might have to live like people carrying an invisible bowl filled to the rim. Still, that boundary came mostly from limited experiments, short exposures, and conservative interpretations of what discomfort meant. Feeling sick at first is not always the same as remaining sick. More recent studies have begun separating the first unpleasant encounter from what happens after repeated controlled exposure. The old warning remains sound. The newer question is how much of that limit belongs to the rotating room, and how much belongs to a body that has not yet learned its rhythm. That last possibility turned out to matter far more than the old rules allowed. Think about the first time you step onto a moving walkway and then step off again. Briefly, your body keeps expecting the floor to carry you. Your balance system made a prediction, the world changed, and the prediction was wrong. Usually the awkward little mismatch disappears after a few steps. Your brain updates its expectations. Rotation can produce a much harsher version of that mismatch. Turn your head inside a spinning room, and the motion detected by your inner ear may not agree with what your eyes and muscles seem to report. The result can be dizziness, nausea, disorientation, or all three together. Those symptoms are real, but a first reaction isn't necessarily a permanent limit. That distinction shaped a study led by Julie Hupfeld and her colleagues. Instead of treating each person's initial tolerance as a fixed property, the researchers used individualized acclimation. People were exposed repeatedly, with the training adjusted to what each person could tolerate. The aim wasn't to find one magic rotation rate that suited everyone. It was to let each nervous system practice dealing with the unusual signals. Before that training, the average tolerated exposure was about 1.4 revolutions per minute. After acclimation, it was about 26 revolutions per minute. 26. That's an increase of more than 18 times the starting average. A person who initially struggled at a slow rotation could, after individualized practice, tolerate motion that older design folklore would have treated as plainly unrealistic for human habitation. The useful surprise isn't that motion sickness vanished as a problem. It didn't. The surprise is that the familiar low RPM limit may have described untrained people meeting an unfamiliar environment, not the final ability of a trained crew. You can see why that changes the engineering conversation. If tolerance were fixed near the first uncomfortable exposure, designers would have little choice. The station would need to rotate slowly enough for almost anyone to enter without preparation. But if tolerance can improve sharply, then training becomes part of the system. The habitat and the human nervous system are both being prepared for the same job. That's a slightly odd thought. We usually imagine astronauts training to operate the spacecraft. Here, some of the training is teaching the astronaut's balance system how to live inside the spacecraft without filing a constant complaint. Still, an average is not a promise to every person. Individualized training counts precisely because people don't respond identically. Nor does a controlled exposure prove that a crew could work comfortably through every movement and task of an ordinary day. Tolerating rotation for a study is not the same as living inside it for months, waking abruptly, exercising, carrying equipment, or turning your head while tired. And training has a practical cost. It takes time. Some people may adapt more slowly than others. The effects would need to remain useful under the messy conditions of an actual mission, not only during a planned session. So Hupfeld's result doesn't hand engineers permission to spin a habitat as fast as they please. It does something quieter and more important. It weakens the idea that very slow rotation is an unchangeable human requirement. The old caution came from genuine discomfort. The newer evidence says discomfort can be trained, at least far more than many designers once assumed. That opens room for smaller, faster spinning habitats. But it doesn't yet tell us which of those habitats would feel like a home. There's a large difference between being able to tolerate a spinning room and wanting to live in one. You can endure a rough boat ride for an afternoon. That doesn't mean you'd happily move your bed, desk, and kitchen onto the same boat forever. Training can make an experience manageable without making it disappear into the background. That distinction counts because a space habitat isn't a laboratory session. It's where you wake up, wash, eat, work, exercise, and try to sleep. Every ordinary task becomes part of the test. A rotation rate that feels acceptable during a short, deliberate exposure may still become tiring when nobody gets to step outside afterward. Fine work could be especially revealing. Imagine repairing a small connector while your head is tilted toward a cabinet. You're trying to hold a tool steady, read a label, and keep track of several loose parts. Even mild disorientation becomes more than an annoyance when the work demands precise hands and sustained attention. The person may tolerate the motion perfectly well and still make more mistakes because some attention is always being spent on staying oriented. Sleep sets a different standard. During training, you know when the session begins and when it ends. In a home, the motion continues while you're exhausted, sick, distracted, or waking in darkness. Rolling over, sitting up quickly, or walking to the bathroom half asleep shouldn't feel like a maneuver that needs practice. A habitat can't merely be survivable on someone's best day. It has to remain usable on their worst ordinary one. Children make the boundary harder to ignore. Adults selected for a mission might accept months of preparation and report discomfort with care. A permanent settlement would eventually include people who didn't choose the engineering compromise, couldn't describe every symptom clearly, or were still learning how to move. We don't yet have enough evidence to declare that a rotation rate trained adults can handle would suit childhood, development, and an entire lifetime. And indefinite residence changes the question again. A person might accept a persistent odd sensation for a week because the goal counts and the end is visible. Remove the end date and small burdens can accumulate. Poor sleep affects work. Awkward movement discourages exercise. Repeated effort can turn shared spaces into places people avoid. None of that requires dramatic illness. A habitat can fail as a home through 1,000 minor negotiations with the body. So engineers need more than a threshold where trained participants stop becoming obviously uncomfortable. They need a range where daily life stays ordinary enough that people can spend their attention elsewhere. That includes quiet concentration, precise repairs, restful sleep, caregiving, play, and the unplanned movements nobody thinks to reproduce in a test. It also includes differences between people, because a town can't be designed only around its most adaptable resident. This doesn't erase the encouraging result. Faster rotation may still be far more practical than older assumptions allowed. Smaller habitats may still be possible. The surprise survives. The body's first objection isn't necessarily its final answer. But a livable design must do more than win an argument with nausea. Once people adapt to the spin, they still have to inhabit the shape wrapped around it. A compact rotating home can satisfy the body on paper and still feel subtly wrong in use. The remaining trouble may be waiting in the rooms themselves, in curved floors, short sightlines, slanted movement, and the constant geometry of living inside a small circle. You might expect a rotating floor to behave like an ordinary floor once the spin rate is set. Stand there, feel your weight, and every part of you should share the same gravity. That's close enough in a very large habitat. In a compact one, it can be quietly wrong. Imagine yourself standing inside a spinning drum. Your shoes are pressed against the outer wall, which serves as the floor. Your head is closer to the axis, the still point running through the middle. Those two positions are only one body length apart, but they aren't moving along the same circle. Your feet travel around a larger circle. Your head travels around a smaller one. You can feel the basic idea with a weight tied to a string. Swing it in a circle, and your hand has to keep pulling the weight inward. Spin it faster, or give it a longer string, and that inward pull grows. A rotating habitat works through the same geometry. The floor pushes your body inward, while your body's motion makes that push feel like weight. But the effect depends on distance from the axis. Farther out, near the floor, the apparent gravity is stronger. Move inward toward the center, and it becomes weaker. So a person standing upright doesn't live under one tidy value of gravity. The value changes continuously from shoes to scalp. On Earth, this is easy to ignore. Your head is farther from Earth's center than your feet, but your height is laughably small beside the planet's radius. The difference in gravity across your body is far too slight to matter in daily life. A glass sits on the table. Blood has a familiar direction to settle. Up and down feel wonderfully boring. Shrink the radius to the scale of a compact spacecraft, and your body is no longer tiny compared with the system. A couple of meters can take up a meaningful share of the distance between the floor and the axis. The geometry that Earth hides now becomes part of standing, walking, sleeping, and working. This isn't merely a question of whether the floor provides enough support. Your balance system, muscles, joints, and circulation are all sharing a body that spans different apparent gravities at once. Bend your knees and the mismatch changes. Lie down across the floor and most of you move to nearly the same radius. Climb a short ladder toward the axis and your apparent weight fades as you rise. Even reaching into an overhead cabinet means moving your hand into a slightly weaker part of the room. Engineers can choose a spin rate that makes a gauge at the floor display a reassuring value. That measurement is real. It just describes one radius. It doesn't automatically describe the person standing above the gauge. A larger habitat softens this because a human body occupies only a small fraction of its radius. The floor and your head then sit at almost the same distance from the axis, so the difference becomes modest. A smaller habitat magnifies it. The room may look normal, and the floor may support you normally, while your body quietly experiences a sloping field from bottom to top. So the hidden cost of compact rotation isn't confined to how quickly the walls pass around you. It's built into the room's dimensions. In a short radius habitat, gravity doesn't arrive as one setting for the whole body. Your feet and your head inhabit different versions of down. Now, put a number on that difference. In one compact habitat concept proposed by Zipe, the radius is only about 6 meters, or roughly 20 feet. The rotation can be chosen so the floor feels reassuringly familiar. Stand there, and your feet would experience about 1.18 g, a little stronger than gravity on Earth, but still close enough to earn the comforting label Earth-like. Your head tells a different story. For a standing adult, it would be closer to the axis and would experience only about 0.89 g. So the same person, in the same room, at the same moment, would have feet in gravity stronger than Earth's and a head in gravity weaker than Earth's. Earth-like would describe a spot near the floor. It wouldn't describe the body as a whole. That's a useful bit of absurdity. You could place a scale under someone's shoes, get a perfectly respectable reading, and still miss what most of that person is experiencing. The scale isn't wrong. It's simply reporting the local condition at the feet. Move the measurement upward, and the answer changes. You might notice this in ordinary movements. Lying down would place more of your body at nearly the same radius. Standing up would spread you across the gradient again. Reaching overhead would carry your hand into weaker artificial gravity. A dropped object would still fall toward the floor, but the pull acting on it would grow as it moved outward. Nothing in the room needs to look unusual for the mismatch to remain. The number also makes the design problem harder to hide behind a single label. Saying a habitat provides 1 g sounds precise. In a compact spinner, it may be precise only if you add where. 1 g at the floor, at a seated person's center of mass, across the length of a sleeping body? Those aren't interchangeable claims when a couple of meters or several feet covers a meaningful share of the radius. But this mismatch may also rescue us from an unnecessarily strict demand. If a compact habitat can't give every part of the body exactly Earth normal gravity, perhaps exact Earth normal gravity was never the only acceptable target. Human bodies already tolerate different loads during sitting, standing, lifting, and sleeping. That doesn't prove a steep head-to-foot gradient is harmless. It means the useful question is broader than whether the floor can imitate Earth. We still need to know what level of rotation protects bones, muscles, balance, circulation, and the rest of the body over long periods. The answer may turn out to be less than 1 g. It may depend on how many hours a day you spend there, how quickly the habitat spins, and how sharply gravity changes across your height. Those limits have to be measured, not wished into place. Zippé's compact number leaves us with a quieter possibility. A rotating room may not need to reproduce Earth perfectly from your shoes to your hair. It may only need to provide enough gravity in the right pattern for the body to stay well. You might assume that anything below Earth gravity is simply a weaker version of the same problem. Less gravity, less protection. Keep turning the dial down, and eventually you reach weightlessness. But that imagine skips a very large middle ground. Mars has about 38% of Earth's surface gravity, usually written as 0.38 g. The Moon has about 16%, or 0.16 g. On Mars, a person who weighs 180 pounds on Earth would feel more like 68 pounds, on the Moon, closer to 29 pounds. You could still stand, walk, lift objects, and feel a floor beneath you. You just wouldn't move quite the way your Earth-trained body expects. That makes partial gravity an appealing compromise for a rotating spacecraft. Instead of trying to reproduce a full 1 g, engineers could aim lower. A slower spin or a smaller radius might become useful if the body can stay healthy at something closer to Mars gravity. The cabin could be easier to build, the motion might be easier to tolerate, and the difference between gravity at your feet and at your head could shrink enough to matter less. You can imagine this as choosing the lowest stair you can comfortably stand on. Reaching the top would be nice, but you may not need the top to keep your legs working. If the middle stair supports you, demanding anything higher adds effort without adding much benefit. The trouble is that we don't yet know which stair supports a human body for years. People have lived for long periods near 1 g on Earth, and for months at a time near 0 g in orbit. We have much less direct human evidence in between. Apollo astronauts spent only a few days working in lunar gravity. No one has lived on Mars. No crew has spent a year, a decade, or a childhood at 0.38 g or 0.16 g. So those familiar worlds don't give us the answer. They give us two useful marks on an almost empty scale. Partial gravity may slow bone loss. It may preserve more muscle, make circulation easier, and give the balance system a steady downward direction. All of that is plausible. None of it tells us whether Mars gravity is enough to prevent serious damage, or whether lunar gravity is barely better than weightlessness over a lifetime. And enough may not be one number. Bones respond to loading, muscles respond to effort, the heart and blood vessels respond to pressure and posture. The inner ear cares about direction and motion. A gravity level that protects one system may leave another struggling. Exercise could help one problem while doing little for the rest. Age counts too. An adult arriving after decades on Earth may respond differently from a child growing up under a weaker pull. Recovery after returning to Earth could be another test entirely. A body might function well in partial gravity, then find full gravity unexpectedly punishing. Still, this middle ground deserves serious attention. A spacecraft may not need to recreate an entire planet inside a spinning cabin. It may only need to cross the biological thresholds that keep each major body system working. Mars and the Moon remind us that gravity isn't an on or off condition. There are many possible flaws between floating and feeling fully earthbound. Somewhere among them may be a level that is gentler on the body, kinder to the spacecraft, and practical enough to build. We simply haven't stayed there long enough to know. You might hear that uncertainty and think partial gravity is just a blank space in the evidence. It isn't quite that empty. Some animal studies have tested versions of reduced weight bearing, giving researchers a rough look at what happens when the body carries part of its normal load instead of all or none of it. Imagine a rat supported by a harness so its feet still touch the floor, but they don't press down with the animal's full weight. It can move around, its muscles still pull against something, its bones still feel some force. This isn't the same as living inside a settlement on another world, and nobody should pretend it is. But it lets scientists adjust one part of the problem and watch how living tissue responds. When NASA reviewed this evidence, one pattern looked encouraging. At around 1/3 of normal weight bearing, some muscle outcomes appeared better than they did with nearly complete unloading. Certain muscles kept more of their size or function when they had a meaningful load to work against. That suggests the body may not need full Earth gravity to gain a useful benefit. Useful, though, is a slippery word. Your muscles and bones share the same body, but they don't read mechanical load in exactly the same way. Muscle responds when it has to produce force. Bone responds to strain, tiny changes in shape caused by weight, impact, and muscle pulling against it. A load that gives muscle enough work may still be too mild, too steady, or too infrequent to tell bone that its full structure is needed. That difference showed up in the animal results. Reduced weight bearing could help some muscle measures without protecting the skeleton as fully as normal Earth loading did. The animals weren't simply healthy at a lower setting. One system appeared to receive more of what it needed than another. It's a little like turning down the water to an entire house and checking only the shower. The shower may still work. That doesn't tell you whether the washing machine fills properly, the upstairs tap keeps its pressure, or the garden hose reaches the fence. One supply level can produce several different outcomes because each part of the house asks something different of it. The same problem runs through the body. A gravity level that helps the large muscles of the legs may not preserve the hip, spine, or fine structures of the inner ear. Blood vessels may have their own threshold. Balance control may need movement as well as weight. Even within bone, the answer can depend on where the bone is, how the load arrives, and how often it changes. There are limits to what these studies can tell us. A harness on Earth changes weight bearing, but Earth's gravity is still acting on the animal's organs and fluids. The setup doesn't reproduce every effect of a genuinely lower gravity environment. Rats also grow, move, and remodel tissue differently from adult humans. They can show us a biological response without giving us a clean prescription for a crew. Still, the finding counts. Partial loading isn't biologically meaningless. The body notices it, and some tissues may benefit substantially. But an improvement over unloading is not proof of long-term sufficiency. The evidence leaves us with a more useful boundary. Some gravity may preserve more than none, while still leaving important damage underway. Partial gravity remains promising. It just hasn't earned the word protective yet. It's easy to imagine a generation ship as a very long mission with an unusually patient crew. Adults board, keep the machinery running, and eventually their descendants arrive. But that imagine skips the hardest passengers, the people who aren't adults yet. Some would be conceived there. Some would be born there. They would learn to lift their heads, crawl, stand and walk, while the ship's gravity shaped every movement. Their bodies wouldn't be preserving an Earth-built form. They would be building a body for the first time, using whatever physical world the ship provided. That changes the question. An adult can lose strength or bone, and perhaps recover some later. A developing child is laying down the structure that recovery would have to work with. Muscles learn their usual loads. Balance learns which way is down. The heart and blood vessels grow into a daily pattern of effort. It all happens together as the child grows taller and heavier. We have far less evidence here than anyone designing such a ship would want. Human spaceflight has mainly studied adults, usually for months rather than whole lives. It hasn't followed families through conception, pregnancy, childhood, puberty and old age under partial gravity. Those are the spans a generation ship would depend on, and they remain among the thinnest parts of the evidence. Animal studies offer clues, but clues are not a childhood. Species develop on different schedules. Their pregnancies differ. Their newborns arrive at different stages of maturity. A result in a mouse or rat may show that gravity affects a process without telling us what level would support a human child from the womb through adolescence. Even the word healthy becomes harder to use. A child might reach ordinary height while balance develops differently. Bones might look acceptable while the heart learns a pattern that causes trouble decades later. Reproduction might succeed in one generation, then reveal problems in the next. We don't know that these things would happen. We also can't dismiss them. And there's an awkward practical problem. You cannot test this cleanly on Earth. A centrifuge can create a gravity-like load, but keeping a pregnant person, an infant, and then a growing child inside one for years is another matter. Short exposures can answer smaller questions. They cannot stand in for an entire upbringing. So the ship cannot be designed only around what keeps its first adults functioning. Its gravity becomes part of the nursery, the playground, the school, and the lives of people who never chose the voyage. A setting tolerable for a trained crew may still be a poor place to build a human body. The uncertainty accumulates. The first generation arrives with bodies formed on Earth, the next does not. Their children would inherit both biology and a way of life shaped entirely inside the ship. If a small developmental effect appeared, the crew might not recognize it because no Earth-raised comparison group would be living beside them. If it became clear only during pregnancy, aging, or the following generation, the original design decision might be decades behind them. That is why this gap is so uncomfortable. The mission needs its greatest confidence where our knowledge is thinnest. It is no longer asking whether adults can endure a voyage. It is asking whether childhood, parenthood, aging, and another childhood can unfold safely inside one moving world, generation after generation. Gravity would not merely be a setting for work, it would be part of every human life the ship carried. That changes the kind of decision we're making. An expedition can accept an unusual environment for a limited time. People volunteer, train, endure it, and come home. A civilization ship has no home port waiting at the end. Its gravity becomes one of the permanent facts of human existence, as ordinary and unavoidable as weather once was. Imagine being handed the controls for a town that will never be rebuilt. You can choose the slope of every floor, the height of every doorway, and the force people feel with every step. But after launch, generations may live inside those choices without ever consenting to them. A number selected during engineering meetings could quietly shape bodies, habits, medical care, and daily life long after the engineers are gone. That makes an uncertain biological assumption look surprisingly close to a constitutional choice. A constitution sets conditions that later citizens inherit. Artificial gravity would do something similar, except it would act through bone, muscle, balance, circulation, and whatever effects we haven't discovered yet. The ship wouldn't merely carry a society, its physical design would help define what kind of society could live there. Suppose engineers choose 1/3 of Earth's gravity because it makes the ship lighter, cheaper, and easier to spin. Adults might function well enough. Early missions might even report few serious problems, but well enough for trained adults is a thin foundation for centuries of human life. If trouble appears 3 generations later, the descendants can't vote for a different planet. They may not even be able to change the ship without rebuilding the structure around them. And that is where confidence counts. We don't have strong evidence that 1/3 gravity is dangerous across generations. We also don't have strong evidence that it's safe. Those 2 statements sound similar, but they lead to very different engineering choices. When the cost of being wrong is carried by people who never agreed to the experiment, uncertainty stops being an empty space. It becomes a reason for caution. You can think of it like designing a bridge when the strength of one material is poorly known. You don't use the most convenient estimate and hope every future truck stays light. You increase the margin. You choose the design that asks less of the uncertain material. On a civilization ship, human biology is partly that unknown material, though calling people material is exactly the sort of awkward sentence this project keeps forcing on us. So a conservative design would lean toward gravity closer to Earth's, especially in the places where people spend most of their lives. That choice would demand a larger rotating radius, a higher spin rate, or some compromise between them. Each option carries mass, structural stress, motion effects, and cost. None is free, but the alternative is to save resources by placing a larger biological wager on every future resident. This doesn't prove that Earth-like gravity is the only acceptable choice. A ship might use different gravity zones. It might preserve near-Earth conditions for homes and medical spaces while allowing lower gravity in industrial areas. It might even be built so its rotation can change as evidence improves. The point is that uncertainty should shape the architecture before launch while choices still exist. Once the passengers are a continuing society, gravity can't be treated as another adjustable comfort setting. It belongs among the ship's deepest commitments, and the less certain we are about biology, the more the structure itself must preserve room for caution. A spinning room and a spinning home may look like versions of the same machine. They aren't. One is closer to medical equipment. The other is a place where you leave a glass of water beside the bed and expect it to stay there until morning. A short radius centrifuge could fit inside a spacecraft without making the whole ship rotate. You would lie down with your feet pointing outward, and the machine would spin you for a limited session. Your feet would feel the strongest effect because they travel around the widest circle. Your head, closer to the center, would feel less. That uneven pull may be acceptable when the goal is a controlled dose instead of an ordinary day. Used this way, rotation becomes a medical countermeasure. It gives the body a period of loading, then stops. The crew can climb out and return to a non-rotating cabin. Engineers could adjust the speed, duration, and schedule as medical evidence improves. If someone becomes nauseated, the session can end. Another person could follow a different routine. That flexibility tells you what the machine is for. A centrifuge session is something done to your body, rather like exercise or physical therapy. It may help protect muscles, bones, circulation, or other systems that respond badly to long periods without enough loading, but the crew still spends most of life elsewhere. They eat, sleep, repair equipment, raise children, and recover from illness outside the spinning room. The treatment may support that life without becoming the place where it happens. A rotating habitat starts with a different promise. The rotation isn't an appointment, it creates the floor. Now a cup sits on a table because the table is beneath it in a steady, ordinary sense. You can walk to the bathroom half awake. Food stays on a plate. Tools can rest on a bench instead of being clipped down after every use. A child learns where down is without waiting for a scheduled treatment. The habitat gives daily life a stable physical direction, including all those hours when nobody is thinking about gravity. This doesn't make a large rotating home medically perfect. Rotation can still produce unfamiliar sensations, especially when people turn their heads or move toward and away from the axis. Different parts of the structure can provide different levels of apparent gravity. The exact biological floor a permanent population needs remains uncertain. Building a floor doesn't settle that question. It gives the inhabitants somewhere to live while they keep learning. Medicine and civilization count success differently. A medical countermeasure can succeed if a limited dose reduces harm enough for a mission. It can be inconvenient, supervised, and designed around individual sessions. A home has to work during breakfast, arguments, pregnancy, childhood, old age, spilled soup, and the quiet hour when nobody wants to follow a treatment protocol. It must function when people are tired, distracted, sick, busy, or simply being ordinary. So intermittent centrifuges may be valuable even on ships that never rotate as a whole. They can add biological margin without demanding an enormous structure, but they don't automatically replace a lived gravitational environment. They answer the narrower question of how to give a body some loading for part of the day. A rotating habitat answers the broader one. What kind of physical world will ordinary life take for granted? Once that distinction is clear, the design choice is no longer simply whether to spin. It is how much of the ship should spin, how wide those rotating spaces should be, and which parts of human life belong inside them. You might imagine a rotating ship as one enormous wheel, with every room moving together. That can work. But it's only one kind of settlement, and the choice changes far more than the direction of the floor. A ship can keep its engines, tanks, antennas, and docking ports mostly still, while one or more living sections rotate around them. Imagine a quiet central spine with a ring turning around it. People sleep, cook, work, and raise children in the ring. Cargo and machinery that don't need gravity stay near the center. This separates two very different jobs. The rotating section provides the lived environment. The fixed section handles navigation and propulsion without having to swing the entire ship around every time it makes a correction. Docking is easier when the arriving vehicle doesn't have to chase a moving door. But the ring must remain connected to the spine. Power has to cross the rotating joint. So do data, air, water, and perhaps people. Bearings wear, seals leak, cables dislike being twisted forever. You've built a calm neighborhood around a mechanical border that never gets a day off. The opposite choice is to rotate the whole hull. Now the ship behaves more like a single thrown wheel. Cabins, farms, workshops, and much of the machinery share the same motion. There may be fewer giant rotating joints between inhabited and stationary structures, which removes one awkward source of failure. The awkwardness moves elsewhere. A spinning ship resists changes to the direction of its spin axis, much as a bicycle wheel does when you try to tilt it while it's turning. Steering thrusters must work with that angular momentum. Main engines may need to fire along carefully chosen lines. Docking ports near the axis become especially useful because the outer hull is sweeping sideways. Even moving heavy cargo from one part of the ship to another can slightly change how the vessel rotates. Then there's the tethered ship. Imagine two inhabited modules joined by a long cable turning around a point between them. The long tether gives you a large radius without requiring a solid wheel hundreds of meters across. That can reduce the difference in apparent gravity between a person's feet and head, while keeping the rotation rate gentler. A tether looks wonderfully economical until you ask it to behave like a town. People, supplies, power, and information must cross the distance between separated modules. The cable stays under tension. A damaged tether isn't merely a broken hallway. It can change the motion of the entire settlement. Reeling the modules inward or outward also changes their spin, like a skater drawing in their arms. Segmented designs take another approach. Several rotating habitats can hang from a central structure or travel as connected pieces. One section might hold farms, another homes, another workshops. A failure can sometimes be isolated. Expansion may mean adding another habitat instead of rebuilding the ship. Yet separation creates borders everywhere. Every flexible coupling must bend without tiring. Every transfer car must meet moving structures safely. Every air hose, power line, and emergency route becomes part of the ship's daily politics as well as its engineering. Who gets access to the hub? Which segment receives repairs first? What happens when one neighborhood needs to stop spinning? So rings, spinning hulls, tethers, and segmented habitats aren't just shapes. They produce different civilizations. Each can provide a broad, steady floor. Each can also make ordinary life depend on a different set of moving boundaries. The structure never makes complexity disappear. It simply pushes the cost into its interfaces. If your floor makes gravity by moving, then gravity no longer belongs only to the shape of the ship. It reaches into every place where one piece moves against another. A door crossing from a still section into a spinning one, a pipe carrying water through a rotating joint, a docking port trying to meet a structure that refuses to stop turning. These stop being side details. They become part of keeping people upright. Think of a washing machine during its spin cycle. When the load is balanced, the drum turns smoothly. When one heavy towel bunches on one side, the whole machine begins to shake. A rotating habitat has the same basic sensitivity, only the uneven load might be water, machinery, cargo, or hundreds of people gathering for dinner. Moving mass changes the balance. The bearings feel it, the frame feels it, everyone nearby may hear it. Bearings carry the rotating structure while allowing it to move. On Earth, a worn bearing in a train or factory machine can be stopped, opened and replaced. On a ship, the bearing may sit between the inhabited world and the part that aims antennas, radiators or engines. Stopping it could mean losing gravity. Reaching it could mean working beside an enormous moving mass. Even ordinary wear becomes a negotiation with the ship's basic living conditions. Then there is vibration. Motors hum, pumps pulse. Bearings pass tiny imperfections around with every turn. A small repeating force can travel through metal like noise through an apartment wall, if its rhythm happens to match the natural flex of a beam, floor, or habitat ring. The movement can grow instead of fading. Engineers call that resonance. You know the gentler version when a washing machine makes one cupboard rattle from across the room. So the ship needs vibration isolation. Soft mounts, dampers, flexible connections, and carefully chosen rotation speeds can keep one machine's shaking from becoming everyone's problem. But softness has limits. A joint must bend enough to absorb motion while remaining strong enough to carry air, water, power, data, and people. The same interface may need to be flexible, sealed, accessible, and almost impossible to break. That is an awkward list for one piece of hardware. Docking makes the problem visible. A visiting craft would prefer a port that stays still. The people inside may live on a floor moving around the ship's axis. Somewhere between those two conditions, passengers and cargo must cross from weightlessness into apparent gravity. They could pass through a non-rotating hub, then ride a transfer car or elevator outward. During that trip, down would slowly appear and shift beneath them. Loose objects would notice before anyone did. Structural loads also change with every maneuver. A ring built to spin steadily may dislike being pushed sideways by an engine burn or tugged unevenly during docking. The load doesn't stay politely in one direction. It passes through spokes, hubs, joints, and bearings, asking each connection to carry forces that daily life rarely reveals. That is the mechanical debt of rotating gravity. The floor feels simple because a hidden chain of moving parts keeps earning it. Balanced mass, quiet bearings, controlled vibration, sealed joints, and careful transitions. None needs to fail dramatically to make life unpleasant. A faint wobble, a recurring hum, or a seal wearing slightly faster than expected could become a problem repeated millions of times. And on a ship meant to last for centuries, repetition is where small debts become expensive. On a long voyage, the repair shop becomes part of the life support system. That sounds slightly absurd until you remember what the crew is repairing. They aren't keeping a convenience running. They're protecting the surface that lets everyone stand, sleep, wash, eat, and move through an ordinary day without slowly losing the benefits that rotation was meant to provide. A broken washing machine is annoying. A failing part in the rotating habitat can change the conditions everybody lives under. If the floor begins moving less smoothly, the first sign may be small. Someone feels queasy during breakfast. A child starts avoiding one corridor. A crew member recovering from an injury finds that walking suddenly takes more effort. The machine's condition appears in people before it appears on a maintenance chart. That makes repair difficult to separate from medicine. A doctor may notice headaches, poor sleep, or a change in balance. An engineer may see vibration, heat, or uneven loading. They're looking at the same problem from opposite sides of the wall. One side measures bodies, the other measures machinery. Neither can safely assume the trouble belongs entirely to someone else. And the work itself has a cost. Parts must be stored for decades, though nobody can predict every failure that far ahead. Tools have to reach awkward places. Heavy components must be moved without making the habitat wobble. Some repairs may require slowing the rotation, which changes gravity while people are still living inside. Imagine having to renovate your apartment while the meaning of down is being adjusted beneath you. The crew also has to preserve knowledge. A bearing can wait in storage for 50 years. The skill needed to replace it may not. Instructions help, but instructions can't capture every sound, smell, or stubborn little movement that tells an experienced technician something is wrong. So each generation has to practice on equipment that may be too important to casually dismantle. They must learn the job before the job becomes an emergency. This creates a quiet maintenance debt. Postponing work may keep life comfortable today while making the eventual repair larger and riskier. Doing the work early may disturb sleep, exercise, medical care, and food production. There may be no empty week when the habitat can simply close. People are always using the floor. Babies are learning to walk on it. Older crew members are depending on it. Crops and fluids are behaving according to its motion. Spare parts create another problem. You can carry duplicates, but every duplicate adds mass. You can manufacture replacements, but manufacturing needs raw material, energy, precise machines, and people who know how to check the result. A component that looks right may still fail under years of repeated stress. On Earth, you can call a supplier. Between stars, the supplier is a room on your own ship, operated by your neighbors. Over time, maintenance would shape the culture as much as the design. Children might grow up learning that a faint change in the floor deserves attention. Work schedules, medical records, and exercise plans could all respond to the health of the rotating structure. Even etiquette might change. You don't ignore an odd vibration when everyone's bones, muscles, balance, and daily routines depend on steady motion. So the habitat cannot be divided neatly into a healthy living space and a machine hidden behind it. The machine sets the terms of health, and the crew's health determines how well the machine can be cared for. After enough years, repair is no longer support work around the edges of biology. It is one of the ways that biology survives. Any final judgment about artificial gravity has to include the people who will keep rebuilding the floor beneath their own feet. The safest answer is probably the least glamorous one. If people need artificial gravity for years, give them more room to make it. Build a large rotating habitat, turn it slowly, and let the living area sit far from the axis. You can feel why size helps by thinking about a playground carousel. Stand near the center, and one small step changes your ride. Move toward the edge, and the circle beneath you becomes broader. A large habitat does something similar for the body. The floor can produce useful apparent gravity without whipping the crew around several times each minute. That slower rotation buys biological margin. Your inner ear is less likely to quarrel with your eyes when you turn your head. Walking from one side of a room to another causes smaller changes in the forces acting on you. The difference between your head and your feet also shrinks, because your height becomes a much smaller fraction of the habitat's radius. The result is a more uniform place to live. A cup rests on a table in a familiar way. A person can bend down, climb a ladder, or roll over in bed without every movement becoming an experiment in vestibular tolerance. The environment still isn't Earth. Rotation always leaves clues, but in a sufficiently large structure, those clues can become quiet enough that ordinary life doesn't have to organize itself around them. This counts because our evidence is incomplete. Short experiments can tell us when people become nauseated. Bed rest can reveal some effects of unloading the body. Spaceflight shows what long exposure to microgravity can do. None of that gives us a complete lifetime record for children, pregnancies, aging bodies, or crews living under partial artificial gravity for decades. A large radius doesn't erase that missing evidence. It reduces how much we ask biology to forgive. Instead of betting that people will adapt to rapid spin, strong motion cues, and noticeable gravity changes across a room, the structure absorbs more of the uncertainty. Steel, shielding, bearings, and construction mass take on work that would otherwise be handed to the nervous system. That is why size reduces evidence debt. The smaller the habitat, the more confidence we need in unproven human tolerance. The larger the habitat, the closer its daily conditions can approach the broad, steady pull our bodies already know. We still need experiments. We still need medical monitoring. We simply aren't making every resident serve as the experiment at once. There will be designs that use compact centrifuges, rotating sleeping rooms, or short daily sessions. Some may prove useful, especially when mass and launch capacity are tight, but those approaches provide gravity in doses or produce stronger rotational effects. They may protect parts of human health without creating a fully settled human environment. So the conservative answer is a large, slowly rotating habitat with generous radius and continuous living gravity. It offers the gentlest spin, the smallest variation across the body, and the fewest demands for heroic adaptation. Its price is equally plain: more material, harder construction, heavier shielding, larger moving systems, and a maintenance burden that never really goes away. Buying biological margin means paying for it in structure. A smaller ship is tempting for a very good reason. Every meter you remove means less structure to build, less mass to launch, and less surface to shield. The loads become easier to carry. The construction job shrinks. So does the amount of machinery that has to keep the whole thing turning without wobbling itself apart. But the saved structure doesn't make the problem disappear. It moves the problem into the people and the maintenance plan. Shrink the radius while keeping familiar gravity at the floor, and the ship has to spin faster. Your inner ear notices turning more readily than your bathroom scale does. Looking up, bending down, or walking across the direction of rotation can produce sensations that don't match anything you learnt on Earth. Some people may adapt well, others may not. We don't have years of experience from large populations living inside small rotating ships, so confidence here would be borrowed from a future experiment. You can slow the rotation by accepting less gravity. That eases some of the motion problem and reduces the demand for a large ring. It also asks a different unanswered question: how much gravity is enough? The Moon offers about 1/6 of Earth's gravity. Mars offers a little over 1/3. Neither place has hosted a child growing from birth, an adult living through decades, or a community passing ordinary health from one generation to the next. We know weightlessness damages bone, muscle, vision, and other parts of the body. We don't yet know where partial gravity stops being merely better than nothing and becomes enough for a whole human life. There are compromises between those choices. A short radius sleeping drum could provide gravity for part of the day. A centrifuge could be used like exercise equipment. Cabins might sit farther from the axis, while storage and machinery occupy the lighter inner spaces. Each approach trims some structural demand. Each also makes health depend on schedules, equipment, adaptation, or a threshold nobody has measured with much confidence. Then there's the quiet problem that arrives after launch. A compact design can use less material, but it often asks more from each part. Bearings, seals, joints, motors, control systems, and balance mechanisms have to remain trustworthy through years of vibration, dust, wear, and repair. On Earth, a failed machine can wait for a delivery truck. Between planets, the replacement shop is whatever you remembered to bring. Redundancy helps, though redundancy adds mass. Easy access helps, though access takes space. Slower rotation helps the body, though it asks for a larger radius. More gravity may protect health, though it raises speed or size. Every sensible improvement sends an invoice somewhere else. That doesn't make the smaller ship foolish. For shorter voyages, carefully selected crews, or missions willing to accept more medical uncertainty, it may be the practical choice. A modest rotating section could still be far kinder to the body than spending the entire voyage weightless. The clear limit is that better and enough for permanent settlement are different claims. So believable artificial gravity is possible. The engineering doesn't require magic, and the biology doesn't give us a free answer. Make the habitat large, and much of the debt sits in mass, structure, and construction. Make it small, and more of the debt moves into human tolerance, partial gravity uncertainty, and machines that cannot be allowed to tire. The choice is not whether to pay, it is where the debt will live. A generation ship would begin as a machine. Every wall would be measured. Every breath would pass through equipment someone had designed, tested, and worried over. The people who boarded it would know they were leaving one world inside a vessel built to cross the distance to another. Their descendants might see it differently. For a child born there, the ship wouldn't feel like transportation. It would be the place where breakfast happens, where people fall in love, argue with their neighbors, lose socks, repair pipes, and complain that someone upstairs is making noise. The machinery would still matter enormously, but it would fade into the background, the way most of us rarely think about the pumps moving water beneath a city. Gravity would help decide whether that life felt temporary or settled. It would shape how a room was built, how people moved through it, and what the word down meant to someone who had never stood on a planet. A floor can seem like the least interesting part of a home. On a generation ship, it would be a promise. You belong here, and this place expects you to stay. That promise would come with choices. The builders could make the ship efficient, compact, and easy to control. Or they could give its people space to move without constantly being reminded that they lived inside a machine. Those goals might pull in different directions. Every extra meter would have to be built, carried, protected, and maintained. Comfort wouldn't be free. But discomfort wouldn't be free either. A ship meant to last for centuries couldn't treat human beings as cargo packed neatly around an engine. The passengers would need homes, habits, privacy, and some sense that daily life belonged to them. Their world would have to support childhoods and old age, ordinary work and useless play. Otherwise, the voyage could succeed mechanically while becoming unbearable to the people asked to continue it. And no engineer can fully test that future. We can measure forces and model structures. We can study how bodies respond to different conditions. We can build short-lived versions of some systems. We cannot place several generations inside a prototype, wait a century, and ask whether the hallways felt like home. So the final design wouldn't be only a solution to motion through space. It would be a decision about human life. How much room does a person deserve? How much complexity should future crews inherit? How ordinary must an artificial world feel before its children stop calling it artificial? Perhaps they would never think of themselves as travelers. Earth might become a story attached to old images and unfamiliar landscapes. Their ship would contain every street they knew, every grave they visited, and every ceiling above every bed. The destination would be real, but distant in a way that borders on myth. By then, gravity would no longer feel like an effect produced by design. It would simply be the way dropped objects fall, the way tired feet meet the floor, the quiet direction shared by everyone asleep inside the turning world. Nobody waking there would need to recite the equations behind that pull. They would notice the result in smaller ways. A cup would stay beside a plate. A blanket would rest across a sleeping child. Water would run toward a drain. An older passenger could stand and know where the next step would land. These ordinary moments are the point of the machinery. The spinning structure would be successful when its motion stopped demanding attention and became the dependable background of a human day. That background would still need care. Bearings would wear. Crews would rebalance loads and teach the next generation how to listen for changes. Medicine would keep watching the bodies that grew under the ship's chosen pull. None of that would make the floor less real. It would show what the floor had always been. A shared system, kept steady so that daily life could remain simple. A generation ship dares to carry life farther than one lifetime can reach. To do that, it must become more than a vehicle. It must choose to become a world, then keep that choice beneath every ordinary step.